Okay, tonight is Matthew chapter 13.
The same day went Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore.
Right, so as the chapter opens, you have Jesus going out of whatever house that he was in, and it says we went down by the seaside, right? And so maybe at first he was thinking he was just going to sit by the sea and maybe get a little sun, get a little tan or something. But it says great multitudes were gathered together, so lots of people came because they wanted to hear what he had to say. So in fact, so much so that if you can picture him at the beach or something, all right, and perhaps you can picture like when we do baptism, say at camp out, there's like a lot of people gathered around, and so like you can't even see the person who's talking a lot of times. So here that's probably Jesus's dilemma here. If he just sat there or stood there and started talking, people wouldn't even be able to see him. So you see what he did. He says he went into a ship, and they probably pushed the ship out a little bit into the water, and so now he was able to. He sat in the boat and talked to them. All right, so this way the people, everybody could see him. So I'm sure he didn't go too far out, or they wouldn't be able to hear him. But he went just a little ways out so everybody could see, and then they all sat down on the shore and they listened. So the next several parables that he's going to be sharing were ones that he shared from the boat to all the multitude who was there.
And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear.
All right, so the parable in verses 3 to 9 is what's known as the parable of the sower. All right, and it's typically known by that because the sower is kind of the key character there. But really, it's not so much about the sower, as you can see, because there's one sower and one set of seeds, and he's tossing them out, and they're landing in all different types of ground. So really, the main point of the story is where the seeds are landing, all right, and what the reaction is as the seeds land there. Okay, so now what I've drawn behind me is four boxes, if you will. Okay, and so we're going to do our best to depict these four things. Okay. All right, so okay, we'll have the sower is on the path here, and some of the seeds went on the side, or the side of where he's trying to do. And actually, if you want to understand what it means by the wayside, all right. So picture that the sower is somebody who plants seeds, all right. So he's tossing them to plant them in the garden, basically, all right. And so some of the seeds maybe bounce too far, so that they go off the area where the dirt is, basically onto the pavement. So they go onto the side of the garden, or in the street, or on the sidewalk, and so nothing's going to happen with them, because you don't plant vegetables on a sidewalk. All right, so that's the wayside. Okay, then the second one would be the one with is it called the stony ground? Okay, where they had not much earth. Okay, so the second one is one where there's stones here, and maybe just a little bit of dirt, and so the seeds kind of land down here. All right, they just kind of go down, and there's maybe a little bit of dirt. All right, so not much happening there. And what it says is they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. So what you have is it does actually start to grow something. All right, and so it grows something, but it says when the sun came up, right? So when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Right? So because there's really no root there. So okay, so they withered away. Okay, now what's the next one? So here's a case where the seeds do actually get planted, all right, and there isn't enough ground, and then the plants start to grow, and what happens is says that there's thorns, right, which kind of attack the plants to the point where there's really even no room for it to grow anymore. Picture something with thorns and stuff, so it can't really grow anywhere, and it can't really bring out any fruit. All right, because if you try to picture some kind of a plant growing tomatoes or something, and there was all thorns and the thorn bushes there, it wouldn't grow. All right, the fruit would get pinched or whatever, and it wouldn't be able to really grow properly, and so it wouldn't be able to bear any fruit. Okay, so that's the third type, the type that's with the thorns, and then of course the last one would be what you were hoping to get in the first place. All right, which would be the seeds that they get planted and they grow and they make things. And they bring forth some fruit, right? Some 30-fold, some 60-fold, some 100-fold. All right, so there's 4 different types. There's the ones that miss altogether, the ones that kind of spring up fast, but they wither away in the sun. The kind that the thorns choke it off, and the kind where it grows the fruit. Right. So those are the 4 different kinds that the parable talks about. All right. Now we're not going to go into yet what it means. Mainly because in a few verses Jesus explains what it means, all right? So we'll let him explain it when the time comes.
And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they, seeing, see not, and hearing, they hear not, neither do they understand.
After Jesus tells this parable, right? Now you can remember he was in a ship, right? So I mean, I called it a boat, but maybe it's a little bigger than a rowboat. Maybe it's a little kind of like a fishing ship or something, right? So I'm going to assume that his disciples were probably on the ship also, because it seems that they had access to talk to him during this time and ask him questions, right? So that's why in 10, it says the disciples came and said, Wait, why are you doing this? Why are you talking like this? That he tells them a story about a sower and seeds, and why are you talking in parables? Why don't you just tell them what it is that you want them to hear? Now in 11 to 13, he gives the answer. See, it's saying in a certain way so that those who have the Spirit of God will understand what he's saying, right? But those who do not, will not, because in this particular case, he's just trying to tell the people the way it is. He says he's calling it the kingdom of heaven, right? But as we said in an earlier chapter, the kingdom of heaven also encompasses the believers on earth. So he's trying to say how it is, right? There's different types of people. So in essence, he's briefing the people who were the believers, and for everyone else, he's saying, well, let's just leave them hanging. Let them ask questions if they're really interested, right? And if you say it that way, then now let's follow what it's saying. It says, it's given unto you, the disciples, to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. To them it's not given, right? So I'm sharing information with those who were my believers at this point, right? So in 12, whosoever hath the Spirit of God, to him shall be given and have more abundance, but who doesn't, right? It says to taken away even what they would have in terms of any knowledge about the kingdom of heaven. Right? And then so therefore I give them in parables because they don't see or hear or understand, and right now I'm not looking to share this information with them, but I'm looking to share it with you, my disciples. Right? So that's his explanation of why he's doing it in parables, right? Because it's pictured, it's like a code, right? It's like a secret code, so only the believers get to understand. And as we read it even today, it does take a certain mindset to figure out what it's saying. Like even this, I mean, granted this one is explained in a few verses, Jesus explains it, but other parables, you have to think in a spiritual way to try to understand what it means. Otherwise, it's just a story. It's a story about a guy throwing seeds, right? Which is not very meaningful. But if you apply a spiritual knowledge to it, then it has some understanding of spiritual meaning, right? So he wasn't looking for people at this point, to try to belittle the believers or make them believe less. So let's share some information without necessarily letting it out to the naysayers and the unbelievers right now.
And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them.
Okay, so a couple things from these verses. All right? One is, as we've said other times, when something fulfills a prophecy, right, that the writer typically points it out, right, as he does in 14. It's fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, what it says there, by hearing you shall hear and understand, and seeing you shall see, and so forth, right? No, or not see. So that's a prophecy of Isaiah. So in essence, he was foretelling that there would be parables used or ways of telling something that not everybody would understand. All right, so that's one thing. All right, now the other thing though is if you read this in a certain way, and I actually had somebody ask me about this not too long ago. I mean, it would actually almost make it sound like Jesus doesn't want people to be converted, right? Because he's saying, I'm going to tell the stories that only the believers understand, and I don't want the other people to understand. It says, especially the latter half of 15, it says, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and should understand with their heart and should be converted and I should heal them, right? It sounds like he's saying, you know, if I'm too plain, I better look out, or they're going to understand what I'm talking about and be converted, right? So so I have to ask me that. Well, what does that, what does that mean? Is he saying he doesn't want people to be converted? Well, of course he's not saying that, right? But what he's saying is that he wanted people to have faith in him, especially at this time, and that picture it this way: like suppose we said today, right, that to be saved in the kingdom of heaven, what you have to do is just come and sit in this pew every Sunday, right? And somebody maybe they would do that. They come and sit in the pew every Sunday. It's okay. That's the action that's expected of a servant of God. But yet, if they don't believe or understand or really give their heart to the Lord, it's meaningless, right? Somebody sitting in the pew with no understanding or faith in God is not going anywhere. See, so he's saying, I don't want them to just do the actions. I want them really to believe. I want them to understand. I want them to open their hearts, not to tell them, these are the actions that are expected, and then have them, in essence, imitate a servant of God. He usually wants them to first be a servant of God, and then when their heart is open that way and they have understanding, now they'll understand what the parables mean. That's why I just sort of want to do the first thing first, let them really believe and have faith, and then they'll have a better way of understanding what it is that I'm talking about.
Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When any one heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word, and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
Right, so here you have Jesus explaining the parable of the sower, right? As he says in verse 18, it says, "Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower." And of course, see, again, we said before about, he says, people you hear but you don't hear, right? So now, in essence, those who heard the words, they still don't really know what the message is. So now hear the parable of the sower in a different way. Now I'm really going to explain what it means, and now you can really hear it in terms of it'll penetrate now, and I'm going to give you the meaning. See, and also, as I said earlier, so his disciples being on the ship with him, so I would assume that he's telling them this, he's telling them the meaning, because he says, it's for you to know the mystery. So if he was going to announce it to everybody, then why did he do the parable in the first place, all right? So obviously he's just going to tell them what it means so they can understand why he's using a parable and how to figure it out, right? And now I'll comment briefly here that parables in general, there's many parables in the Bible, and Jesus uses many parables, as it says here, not only in this chapter, but others as well. And some are easier to understand than others. But in general, what you're looking to do is to try to understand what each part of the story represents. It always represents something else. It's rare that something would be exactly what it is in the story, or else it's not much of a parable, all right? So almost always every element of the story represents something else, and something in terms of a spiritual type story, right? And so now in verses 19 to 23, he's explaining this parable. So now we can back up and try to fill in the blanks here. Right, so he says in 19, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understands it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which was sown in the heart. This is he which receives the seed by the wayside. Right, so the first one, which was the seed was on the wayside, right? It's comparing it to somebody who it never penetrates, right? Maybe somebody comes to church, let's say, and we preach the sermon to them, and they hear the words, right? They hear the words, but it never penetrates the heart, right? So it never really gets in there, and they leave and didn't really understand that. I didn't know what that was about. And then notice what it says. It says the evil one comes and snatches it right away, so that whatever benefit they may have gotten is going to be gone, right? Because it didn't penetrate. Sometimes we refer to that kind of person as a hard-hearted kind of person, right? If maybe they came, just out of whatever, and they weren't really seeking; they were just here and not really listening or paying attention, or they hear the words, but the meaning didn't penetrate, right? So that's depicted by the seeds on the wayside. In other words, they didn't fall where the sower intended them to fall. If you can picture, and we'll just use church as the example because that's that's easier to picture, right? So because we're speaking and the words are hitting everybody, all right? So imagine a room full of people and we're preaching the word of God. Everybody in the room hears the words, but it's affecting different people different ways. So you almost always have one or more people who it's really not penetrating, right? It's not getting through to them. So especially if the person is not already a believer. So and I can always tell. I can tell when I'm speaking who's getting it and who's not, right? So I can always tell. So not that I would ever put the label on them. There's the hard-hearted person, or there's the one with the seeds falling on the wayside, right? But you can tell, right, that when it's not getting through. So that's the seed on the wayside. So you're picturing the sower tossing the seeds out, and some of them bounce off the dirt onto the street or the sidewalk, and then they're just laying there. So some bird's going to come and eat it up, and it's gone, right? So the birds there represent the evil one, snatching away the seed, which was the word of God. All right, so that's the first one. All right, then you go to the one with the next one, and that's verse 20. I think 20 and 21. It says, "He that received the seed in the stony places is the one that hears the word and with joy receives it. But yet he doesn't have root in himself, so it only lasts for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises, then he's offended." Okay. So this is, and we see this as well, right? I mean, we've had people come here to church. They come to one meeting. They say, "This is great. This is great. This is just what I wanted, right? This is just what I've been looking for. I want to get baptized. I want to be a member, and so forth." And usually we hold that person back, right? Even though it may seem like, well, why wouldn't you let this person be a member of the church? Well, again, we get concerned that there's no root there, right? It just sounds great at one time. Oh, everybody's so nice and so forth, and that's the person where it hasn't taken root yet. All right, so you picture it here that the seed got in, but if somebody like that were to join the church, I mean, probably for the first month or so, they'd be into everything, right? They'd be all excited and let's do this and let's do that. I want to do, all right. But as soon as one thing happens, one offense, one disappointment, or whatever, they're gone. All right, they're gone. Just as quick as they came in, they're gone. Right, because there's no root there. All right, they haven't had time to really root into the church and really feel like this is my church. This is where God wants me to be. It was just kind of an exciting thing that let me grab onto this. It seemed exciting. Everybody's so nice, right? But as soon as one person's not nice, well, I guess everyone wasn't so nice after all. So maybe this wasn't the place after all. So you see, that's what that's referring to. That's what it says. As soon as the first persecution or offense comes, they're gone, right? Because they had no root. And again, not that we not that anybody's happy at an offense or whatever, but those of us who've been in for a long time, all right, and if somebody says something to you that would hurt your feelings or whatever, I mean, your first thought isn't going to be, that's it, I'm never coming again, right? You just figure out how to resolve it and get past it, because I mean, this is our church, right? So we're not going to leave over, one person says something that hurt my feelings, all right? But somebody who's new, it does happen, all right? And we've seen that happen, all right? Somebody says something that hurts my feelings, and they never came again, all right? So it's somebody without root, it's easier for them to leave because they haven't put down roots yet. Okay? Now the third one is the one with the thorns, all right? And so what it says here in 22, it says that he that receives the seed among the thorns is the one that hears the word. It says, but the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. So this would be somebody who becomes a member of the church, right, or becomes part of the family of God, right? But then now we see all these thorns, right? And it says the cares of this world, it says, or the deceitfulness of riches, or basically the things of life, it says chokes it out and gets to the point where it can't be, the person is unfruitful, right? And you do see this happen as well, because everybody has their cares of life, and again, it's not necessarily always a critical thing. I mean, it could be an illness, it could be a financial problem, or it could be, things are just not, it could be a marriage breakup. I mean, there's lots of things that can be the cares of life. And so when somebody's going through that, a lot of times they're not that, interested in, I missed church, for a few months, or I'm not reading the Word of God anymore, or I'm not visiting the sick anymore, or whatever. That's not at the forefront of somebody's mind when they're struggling through cares of life, right? And so that's why it says it chokes it out and the person becomes unfruitful. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've given up on God. It just means they're not really doing anything of a fruitful nature at that point. And over a period of time, they can wind up just they just got in the habit and they're not going to be part of the church anymore because of the cares of life. So that's the number 3 one, right? It's just somebody who the cares of life overcomes the person, so they can't really fully function as a servant of God. Okay, and then finally the last one, as you would expect, right? The one that lands in the good ground, all right? So now the fruit grows, and it says some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold, right? So that's the fully functional servant of God, all right? So somebody who's got the cares of life in check. It doesn't mean that you don't have them. It means you learn how to balance them. You learn how to still function as a servant of God. And understanding that what's the reason for the 30, 60, 100-fold? Well, different people produce different amounts of fruit. But yeah, just understand that everybody's different. See, so to say that if the parable just said, okay, and some bear fruit and it's all 100-fold, all right, well then it's saying that everybody is exactly the same, and perhaps one of us is going to look and say, gee, I do more than you. You're not really 100-fold. If I'm the 100, you're a 50 or something like that. So it's not the way we want to be looking at each other, obviously. So understand that everybody has different gifts, everybody has different talents, and so some is going to bring 100-fold, some is going to bring 30-fold, and it's all okay, right? Because any amount of fruit that you're bringing forth, especially if you're functioning to the best of your ability, is fine, right? That's what God wants us to do, to do the best that we can do, the best that we can be, not to compete with other people or other plants, but rather to be the best that we can be. So 30, 60, or 100 is all good, right? Whichever is right for us.
Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn.
All right, we have the wheat and the tares. Okay, so this is a little similar to the other one, but not exactly the same, right? It says that the person in the parable is planting wheat, Okay, so he's got seeds that are wheat seeds, right? So we're gonna do some planting here. Okay, so here's some wheat seeds. Okay, so we got a few wheat seeds there, about 6. All right, and it says he planted the wheat in his on his land, right, and was prepared to grow wheat. So however long it takes to grow wheat, some period of time in the past, he's going to have that wheat, right? Of course, wheat is used for all kinds of things, right? You make it into bread or cakes or whatever. Okay, all right. So that's the wheat. Now it says at night. While men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Okay. Now, do you know what tares are? It's weeds, all right. But it's in fact even weeds that will kind of injure, whatever it's growing near, because it can wrap around it and so forth, right? So yeah, it's weeds, it's things that are worthless and and not what you want to grow, all right? But it says that the seeds for tares look a lot like the seed for wheat. So at the time that they're planted, you can't necessarily tell them apart, right? Because they look almost the same, all right? So now we'll put some of those in. All right, so now the enemy came and snuck some tare seeds in there among the wheat, right? And so when you're first looking at it, you look at it, okay, it looks like it's all the wheat seeds until what happens? Until they grow, right? So now it starts to grow, and so now you'll have some that are wheat and some that are the weeds, okay? And so forth. I'm not going to draw every single one, right? Okay, so you have the wheat and the tares are growing together now, right? And so some of the workers are looking at this. Okay, so the servants of the householder came and said, "Hey, you didn't mean for this to happen, did you? You planted all good seeds, right? All the wheat seeds." In 27, it says, didn't you sow good seed in the field? So where these tares come from, right? Where the weeds come from? And now the householder, who's of course the Lord in the story, in 28 says, an enemy did this. Okay, so then the servant said, okay, what do you want us to do now? Right? Do you want us to go pull all the weeds out, and therefore you'll have just wheat left? And if we were looking at some of the gardens today, maybe you would actually do that. Maybe you try to get in there and get the weeds out, or of course they have chemicals today that you can just kill the weeds. You get the weed man to come, and he can spray it and just kill the weeds. And right, but then this is the only way you can do it. You're going to just reach in there and start pulling them out, right? Well, what is going to happen if you start pulling out weeds? You're going to pulp the wheat too, right? Because maybe it's even wrapped around it, or it's just so close together, and so you're going to wind up injuring or killing a lot of the wheat too to pull the tares out. So that's why he says don't do that. All right, in 29 it says no, lest while you got up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. So it's saying instead, let's just let everything grow together, right? We'll have wheat and we'll have weeds, and then when it's time to do the harvest, all right, we'll harvest everything, and then we'll sort it out. All right, so you can picture them at the harvest time. All right, everything's laid out. Okay, wheat, tare, right, and so forth. All right, and so you wind up with a pile of the wheat and a pile of the tares. All right, and then it says we'll bundle up the tares. We'll throw those in the fire, and then the wheat we put that in the barn because that's the good stuff. That's what we wanted in the first place. Okay, so that's the parable. The householder in the story is the Lord. All right, so he's planting stuff. All right, and so typically he would plant. If you look up here, right, the other parable, right, what was being planted was the Word of God, right? It was growing into the servants of God. Okay, so you can kind of assume that this would be similar, right? That the good stuff, the wheat, would be the servants of God, right? So that's what the Lord wanted to produce when he planted the seed, which was the Word of God, right? But whereas it says the enemy put the other ones in. So of course you know who the enemy is, right? The enemy would be the devil. So it says the enemy planted other things among the wheat. See, so what that's saying though is that it's conceivable that there could be people among servants of God who would not be servants of God, right? And again, not that they're intentionally there as spies or anything, right? But it's just that's the way it is, right? That you have a mixture because when we we turn on the lights, we open the door, everybody's welcome. Okay, and and people come in, and some people may even say, "Oh, well, yeah, I want to be a member. I'll get baptized." And we can't read somebody's mind or heart. I mean, we believe that they're converted. I mean, we try to look for the signs of repentance and so forth. But anybody can come in and say they want to be a member, and we'll say, "No, get out. We don't want you as a member, right?" We accept anybody. So it could well be that you could have people in your midst who are not really converted, right? And they may be troublemakers. They may cause problems, and they're there as basically agents of the enemy. Now, part of this also is to understand that if we see that somebody is a troublemaker or whatever, right? It's not necessarily our call to say, oh, you're really an enemy of the devil here, right? You're part of the enemy, right? Because it could just be somebody who's a troubled person, right? I mean, they may still have good intentions, and they may well have been called by God, but they're just a troublesome person, right, for whatever reason. So it's not really up to us to be judging and again saying wheat, tear, right? And also, try to picture what would happen. Let's say if we identified a member of our congregation as a tear, right? And so suppose it's somebody's wife or somebody's father or somebody's best friend, right? What's going to happen if you told something like that to get out, right? You lose other people too. You lose people who really were the servants of God. You could lose a whole family, right? Or you could lose people who were their friends, right? So that's the part about saying don't try to pull out the tares here because you're going to lose wheat too, all right? So so we don't do that, all right? We don't go to somebody and say, I don't believe you really should be here, so get out, all right? We let the Spirit of God handle it. We let people come and go on their own accord. But worst case, if everybody stays in till the end of their life, it says that now the Lord sorts it out at the end. All right, and at the end, when we go stand before Him, He knows who His believers are. He knows who His servants are. So then He says He separates them out. He used the sheep and the goat example. All right, that's one of the examples given. All right, the Lord knows who's who, so He'll sort them out. And you don't have to picture this way that the tares bundled up and go on the fire. All right, and the wheat goes into the barn. So the Lord knows who's who, and He'll separate them at the end. So that's why He's saying don't get too worried about trying to sort them out here. Just do the best you can with who's here, recognizing that you're going to have a mixture, and then at the end, I'll take care of sorting them out. Okay, so that's the basic message of the wheat and the tares. Right? Again, it's not that we would sit around judging, and say wheat tear, or like that, but rather understanding that you're going to have a mixture, and so don't get discouraged. Don't allow people to tell you, if this was really the church, every person in here would be perfect, and every person would be, the maximum servant of God and so forth, right? It's not necessarily the case, right? People are people, and you'll have a mixture, but don't worry about it. God will sort it out at the end.
Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Another parable spake he unto them, The kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world.
In 31, 2, and 3, we have 2 different parables. Okay, one is in 31, 32, and one is in 33. Okay, they have similar meanings, and to be honest, most of the Christian world believes that they have a certain meaning that's not what I think it means. Okay, right? And that I think from this perspective of our church, we can pull a different meaning of this than what most of the Christian world believes. Right? In 31 and 32, it says the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man takes and sows in the field. All right, so it makes a point to say that this is the least of all seeds. So sometimes we talk about having faith that's the size of a mustard seed, all right? That's like the smallest little bit. So the mustard seed is small, right? And it's small, but when it's grown, it's the greatest among herbs, and then becomes a tree, all right? And it says, so the birds of the air come and hang out in the branches of the tree. At the time that Jesus was was telling this, the church was just beginning, or hadn't even begun, because it was beginning with him, right? And so when he died and resurrected and then went to heaven, then the disciples started it, and it started as a small thing, and it started to grow, right? So growing is a good thing. Okay? However, now it says when it's the greatest among herbs and becomes a tree, right? Actually, a mustard seed doesn't grow into a tree. Okay, it grows into a large plant that looks like a tree. So some may call it a tree. It looks like a tree, but it's not a tree. Okay? So that's number one thing I want you to keep in mind. All right, and then the number two thing is that it says the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches. Right, now that's not necessarily a good thing in parables. Okay, we read the parable of the sower earlier, where it said that the seeds that were thrown by the wayside, that we figured out later that was like the word that the devil came and snatched it up. In the parable, the birds are the ones that come and snatch it up. All right, so the birds are not necessarily a good thing in parables. Okay, so the way that I read this is that he was telling them that the church was going to grow. Okay, it was going to grow and grow and grow, but yet it was going to then look like the church he set up, but not really be the church anymore. Okay, and from our perspective, that is our belief, that the church grew, and then they started making changes, right? What we refer to as the apostasy occurred eventually, right? As they changed things about the church the way Jesus originally set it up, right? And so I would see it that way, that this is telling us that yes, it's going to grow, but it's going to grow into something that looks like the church, but is not really the church, to the point where it says birds, and I would equate that to things of the enemy, because that's how the birds were used earlier, would come and lodge in the branches thereof. Right? So it was like he was foretelling that this is how the church was going to go in the future after he was telling it. Also, the other thing that leads me to believe that this one is more of a warning, right, is that the ones that came before this are also of that nature, all right? That the parable of the sower is telling you that, so some people are going to spring up fast and then leave, and some people are going to let the cares of life choke out the word, and so it's warning you, be the one with the good ground, with that one. So it's warning you that other people will not last. The wheat and the tares is warning you that watch out. There's going to be people who look just like servants of God, and and then you're going to have to weed them out. So the fact these were all like warning ones, that's why these may believe that this one would kind of fall into the similar kind of a thing, a warning of what's to come. And now when you look at 33, 33 is another parable, right? But to me has a similar message to the one that we just read. Right? It says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal." It says, "Till the whole was leavened." Okay, so leaven is typically used to make the bread rise, right? And so now it's saying that when you mix in the leaven here into 3 measures of meal, it's going to make its way through the whole thing. So it starts out as unleavened, and then the leaven affects the whole thing. Right? Now again, a lot of people say, "Oh, isn't that nice?" Like the leaven is a good thing. Like when you cook with it, I mean, it's a good thing. It makes the bread rise and so forth. Yet throughout the scriptures, every time leaven is used as an example, it's used as a bad thing. All right, and people who have written about this parable and they say that the leaven is a good thing, they'll say, everywhere in the Bible, leaven is used as a bad thing, except here. Right? In other words, this is the only exception that where leaven was used as a good thing. Right? Well, I'm going to say it's not a good thing in this parable either. Right? It's saying that if you allow bad things to come into the church, what's going to happen? It's going to affect everybody. Right? If you start like changing beliefs, or you're changing your approach to serving God, and you get a few in like that, suddenly everybody gets affected and the whole church is affected. Right? And as we said in the earlier parable, in the early days of the church, they let the changes come in, and different changes came in that affected everybody, and eventually it was no longer the church, and the apostasy came. See, so turning your eyes away from this or that, or ignoring this or that, let this come in, let that come in, it's just not a good thing, because eventually it affects everybody. It affects the whole church, all right? And so that's what it's saying here, is that the leaven is mixed in, and then suddenly the whole thing is leavened, so it affects everything. So again, it's just warning us against not letting the foreign influence come in, the influence of the enemy come in, because it can affect the whole church, right? As it did in the early days, and that's what brought us to today, where the gospel had to be restored because it was leavened back then, right? And just as a little side note, right? Again, it's not critical to understanding the parable, but the 3 measures of meal was actually like a standard offering, if you will, at the time. Like if you were going to have people come over and and give them something to eat or whatever, 3 measures of meal was like the normal hospitable offering, if you will, right? That somebody would typically use. So that's why it was used as an example here, because that's what somebody would usually be making for guests or whatever, right? When Abraham and Sarah entertained the 3 angels, or remember they came and they said that Sarah was going to have a baby, right? It says that Sarah was in the tent preparing 3 measures of meal to give out to them, right? So for an example, okay? So like I said, it was a standard amount that was used as a hospitable offering, so that's why they used the 3 measures of meal. See, some people try to make something out of the 3, as if the 3 means something, and then, well, the 3 measures of meal was just a standard offering, so that's why that was used as an example. Okay. Now in 34, 35, he's just commenting, all right, again about using parables, all right? It says always in the book of parables that it might be fulfilled was spoken by the prophet, saying he was speaking parables, as we've said many times that there was prophecies about him using parables, and this is one of the instances that fulfills that.
Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came up to him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear.
Whereas the first 4 parables in this chapter, right, which is the sower, the wheat and the tares, and the grain of mustard seed, and the leaven in the meal, those 4, the first 4, those were explained to the people when he was in the boat, right? He was talking to the whole multitude then, right? And so those were 4, if you will, public descriptions of parables, right? So, and then the one time with the sower, he turns the disciples on the ship and explains to them. But for the most part, those 4 were just announced to everybody. Right? Now in 36, it says Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and now his disciples were with him. So now he was just with his disciples. So his disciples, who were probably, busting at the seams here, saying, tell us what the tares thing means, all right? We didn't get that at all. So here he had, told the parable of the tares to everybody, the wheat and the tares, and now he's going to explain it to them in the house, all right? So again, this is not in front of everybody, but just for his disciples. And so now you see what he does here, seeing that as I read this, it gives you understanding as to how deciphering parables works, all right? That he's telling you what each thing in the parable means, and then figuring that once you figure that out, then the story becomes more obvious, all right? Because if you know what everything represents, then it's not about somebody throwing seeds or somebody planting wheat or weeds or whatever, but it's now his meaning on a spiritual level, right? So you can see how he's lining it all up. In 37, it says, He that sows the good seed is the Son of Man, which is Jesus, right? The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, which is what's going to grow the wheat, which is the children of the kingdom. The tares are the children of the wicked one, right? As we said, that the devil's the one who plants those. In 39, so the enemy sold them as the devil. So the harvest is the end of the world, right? And the reapers are the angels. So the way it's said in the story, that at the end of the harvest time, reapers came and kind of harvested everything and so forth. It says the angels are the ones that are going to be doing that at the end of the world, right? The 40, so the tares are gathered and burned in the fire. So shall be in the end of this world, that those who were the children of the evil one be burned at the end of the world. 41, the Son of Man shall send forth the angels, they'll gather out of the kingdom everything that doesn't belong there, all right, and them which do iniquity, those go in the furnace of fire, the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father, right? So once you understand what everything means, then the story makes sense, and then you see what it is he's trying to explain to the people.
Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it.
These are two more parables, all right? 44 is one, and 45 and 46 is another one. And these also, to me, have a similar message to each other, right? And so that's why they're grouped together here. All right, so 44 says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hid in a field. The treasure here would represent the gospel of Christ, right? And so that the idea is that when you found it, right, that you react in a certain way, right? So if you figure it that way, it says when a man is founded, he for joy he goes and sells all that he has to buy that field. In other words, if it's buried in this field, I want that field, all right, because it's the best treasure that I could get. So this is I want to own this field because that's where this treasure is, and so that's the gospel of Jesus Christ, all right. And I think that Christ telling his disciples this is that they can appreciate what's being offered to them, right, as he's sharing this information with them and commissioning them to be his disciples, his representatives. You must understand this is not just a fly-by-night thing. I mean, I'm giving you something that's more valuable than anything else, and so hopefully we would all feel the same. That when you found the gospel, that if you were asked to sell everything you had to own it, I mean, that would still be worth it, right? And no one's asked to do that, but if you were, it would be worth it because this is something that's worth more than what we would own in this world, right? So here it's the treasure in the field. So this guy's gonna go buy that field, right? Because that valuable treasure is hidden in that field. And then when you look at 45 and 6, it's a similar message, right? Where it says that the merchant man is seeking goodly pearls, and he finds one pearl of great price, right? It says when he finds that, he goes and sells everything that he has to buy that one pearl, right? And again, the pearl is also the same thing, the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? That in that parable, he said that was the one, the pearl of great price, because of course the great price that accompanies that pearl is that Christ gave his blood for us, right? So that would be the great price. But in the parable, it says he went and was willing to sell everything he had to buy that pearl. He had to own that pearl because that was the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the end of the world. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Jesus saith unto them, Have ye understood all these things? They say unto him, Yea, Lord. Then said he unto them, Therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old.
Right, so this is another parable. Okay, and it's saying that the kingdom of heaven is like a net cast into the sea. All right, and so if you throw out the net, and this is something as fishermen they would recognize, you throw out the net and you bring stuff in. Now, of course, you're hoping to bring in fish when you throw out the net, all right? But in fact, you throw out the net, you pull it back, all right? It's not going to have just fish in there. It's going to have other things too, other things that are garbage or things that are not fish. And so the idea that you're just going to take everything from the net and start eating it all would be silly, right? Because you have to sort it out, right? And say what's good and what's not good. Okay. Now it's likening that to really what we do today with the gospel. All right. I mean, we open doors and we're basically casting out the net. All right. So we bring in anybody. Now it doesn't mean that every person that comes through the door is somebody that's going to wind up being a member of the church or part of the family of God. Right. You get some who come in for other reasons or whatever. Right. So you get a mixture, and so basically you take everything and then you let God sort it out. right? So that's what it's saying. It says when it's full, it's drawn to shore, and they sat down and gathered to the good in the vessels, but cast the bad away, right? And so it says, so shall it be at the end of the world. The angels will come and sever the wicked from the just, right? And so that's similar to the wheat and the tares, really, right? But that's the part we want to understand. It says the angels will separate it. I mean, we don't try to separate it, all right? We let the angels separate it, all right? And shall cast the wicked into the furnace of fire, where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth, all right? So I said, it's not up to us to say, well, we're going to limit who we bring in through the door. I mean, we open the door and we say everybody's welcome. Okay, that's how we believe in the church. We bring everybody in, and then we hope the Spirit of God will touch everybody who comes in. We try not to prejudge people who come in and say, oh, that person's never going to go for this, right? Because you never know, right? That the Spirit of God can work on anybody. And so we let everybody come in, and then let the Spirit of God sort them out as to who's going to be in the church, who's going to be in the family of God, and who's not. And so that's what it's referring to. You throw out the net and you bring in what you bring in, and so that's what we do here as well. Okay. And so in 51, after describing that parable to the disciples, he says to them, now, do you understand what I'm telling you? All right, and they say, oh yeah, Lord. All right. Personally, I question whether they really understood it, but I guess they were embarrassed that they were not slow in getting this. But so, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we got it. All right, so Jesus said, well, okay then, because in 52 he's going to give them actually another short parable that's really about them. He said to them, therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven, which that's them, they're the ones being instructed, is like a man that's a householder, which brings forth out of his treasure things new and old. Right? What he's saying is that if you're going to be teaching people the gospel, understand there's going to be things of old that you're going to teach, and things that are new that you're going to teach, right? Because there's stuff, there was good teaching in the Old Testament, but yet the gospel of Christ is new, right? And so it's in some cases the old is done away with and it's fulfilled in the new. So he says you're going to have to understand there's a mixture of old and new here. So don't rely totally on one or totally on the other. You got to teach the whole truth. So you have to teach the whole thing, right? So if you understand, then I need you to teach appropriately, is what he's saying. Yeah, I need you to teach the message the way I've taught it to you, which is a mixture of the new and the old, right? Is what they're being asked to teach here. Okay, so that's why he said, do you understand what I'm telling you? Because if they didn't understand, then how could they teach? Right? And so we would say the same today, right? If we as the members of the church are being asked to teach people or show people the way, well, first you got to understand the way. Otherwise, how can you show them the way if you don't know the way? And so that's why I'm saying if you understand, then okay, then I expect you to teach both the mixture of the old and the new. Okay.
And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these parables, he departed thence. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished, and said, whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joses and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. And he did not many mighty works there, because of their unbelief.
So that's the end of the parables at this point. But it says 53, it says when Jesus finished these, he left that house. It says and went into his own country, right, where he was from, which he grew up in Nazareth. Okay, so he would have gone back there, and so he says when he came there, he says he taught these same parables in the synagogue, and so you can imagine people saying, well, who is this guy? How can he even know these things? Right? He says, whence has this man this wisdom, these mighty works? Isn't this the carpenter's son? Where did he learn this from? It's not like he went to college, right? It's not like his father could have taught him. His father just knows how to make chairs, right? How did he learn all these parables and so forth, and that way to get this wisdom from? And isn't he the carpenter's son? Isn't Mary his mother? And aren't these his brother? This is kind of where you find out a little bit about his family, right? Just from what they're putting in here as the comments. Aren't these his brothers, James and Joses and Simon and Judas? So therefore, he would have had 4 brothers. Aren't these his sisters with no name at all? So I'm saying, where did he hear all these things, right? This was his family. His father's a carpenter, his mother's Mary, he's got these brothers, he's got these sisters. But where did he learn all this stuff? He didn't learn from any of them. He didn't go to school. So, basically they were questioning where this even coming from, right? So, and then 57 says, and they were offended in him because they probably said, you know, you can just imagine, who are you to tell us these things? You know, I mean, who do you think you are? You know, but you know, I went to school. I was trained in the seminary. I mean, who do you think you are? Kind of thing. And so that's probably how they were reacting, right? So Jesus' response here is, a prophet is not without honor save in his own country and his own house. This is like a double negative, right? So you want to, yeah. So you want to try to follow what it's saying. It says a prophet is not without honor, all right? And so in other words, he has honor except in his own country and his own house, all right? So in other words, saying that somebody who's a prophet, I can go somewhere else and they would respect what I'm saying and listen to what I'm saying, but because I grew up here, you all saw me growing up, and so you figure, well, again, who are you to say these things to me? So that's why he's saying that's where the prophet's going to get the least honor, is in his own country or his own neighborhood, right? Where people saw him grow up, and so they'll just always think of him as the carpenter's son, as opposed to a prophet, right? Which kind of makes sense, right? I mean, it's that if you knew some child growing up and now he's going to come and say, I'm the prophet, you're thinking, you're so-and-so's kid who kept going in my yard, and when I told him not to or something, right? So it'd be hard to really garner a lot of respect for somebody in that situation. So that's why he's saying, he says, in my own country, I'm not going to get any respect here. And so now in 58, you see where it says, he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So basically, because the people did not believe, he did not do a lot of mighty works there, right? Because he was constrained by their unbelief. The people who believe and they have faith can move the arm of God and can help to cause miracles to happen, but when there's unbelief, then it's not happening. So that's why he says even Jesus didn't do the mighty works there because of their unbelief.